Our presentation today is Disability, Long-Term Work-Related, and Workplace Possibilities. My name is Mary Jordan, and I'm a Senior Benefit Specialist here at Empers, and I'll be your moderator today. Now, before I hand off the presentation, let me introduce your presenter, Jamie Mullen. Jamie is also a Senior Benefit Specialist here at Empers, and he specializes in retirement and disability counseling. Jamie, I'll let you take it from here.
Well, thank you very much, Mary, and thank you everyone for attending. As Mary said, my name is Jamie Mullen. I'm a Senior Benefit Specialist here at Empers, and frankly, that's how you might know us best, is through the administration of your defined benefit retirement plan. But one other thing that we also do here at Empers is administer your disability insurance. So that's really our key message today. We want you to get to know and understand the disability insurance that you have as part of your employment package. And before I get into the details of the coverage, I'd like to just do a brief overview, really a history of how disability benefits have been administered by our system over the years. In the early days, we had what was called a retirement disability. Now, if you're at all familiar with how we calculate retirement benefits, you would know that your lifetime retirement benefit is going to be based on your total service credit and your average salary, meaning the longer you work and the higher your pay, the higher your lifetime retirement benefit will be. Well, that's essentially how the disability benefit used to work. So if you became disabled and you were not able to work, we would calculate a benefit for you at that time based on your number of years of service and your average salary. So obviously, if you didn't have a lot of service, that could mean a relatively low disability benefit. Now, over time, that's evolved, and today it's administered as an insurance product. So what that means essentially is if you become disabled and you're not able to work, this insurance will replace a certain percentage of your income. And we'll explain all about that. But since 2004, we've contracted with Standard Insurance Company to administer this insurance product for us. A couple of other details about the coverage. Number one, it's paid for by your employer. So this is free coverage to you. And it covers all benefit eligible employees. So if you're actively employed in a benefit eligible position, you do have this insurance. So when we're talking about the insurance, there's three major components to it. And that's what we're going to spend our discussion on today, is reviewing the three major components. So first, there's long-term disability. So if you have an illness, injury, or disease and you're not able to work, you might qualify for this long-term disability benefit. Secondly is work-related disability. So if you perhaps had an accident or an injury on the job, if it was tied to your job duties, you may qualify for work-related disability. The work-related disability would be a bit more of a generous benefit than the regular long-term disability. And then thirdly, there's what's called a Workplace Possibilities Program. So this program is in place with the hope that you can stay productive at work without ever having to file a disability claim. So if you're struggling with a condition, there's certain ways to keep you at work and to be able to do your job better. So we'll explain that program as well. But right now, I'd like to launch into our first poll question. And I simply wanted to know from the audience if you're aware that disability insurance was part of your overall employment package. So if you could just take a moment to answer yes or no to that. Great. So that helps us a lot. Thanks so much for responding. So it looks like the overwhelming majority of you are familiar with this coverage. So hopefully this presentation will serve to reinforce what you already know, perhaps give you some more tidbits that would be beneficial to you. And then, of course, if you didn't know you had disability coverage, this should be very relevant to you. So I'd like to start now with the details of the coverage. And again, we're going to take this piece by piece. I'm going to start with the long-term disability benefit. And really, I think the most important piece of information to know is how much does the benefit pay. So again, you have an illness, an injury, or disease. You're no longer able to work. You're approved for long-term disability benefits. This insurance provides that 60% of your pre-disability earnings are replaced. Now, that amount is then reduced by deductible income. So what is deductible income? Well, deductible income would include things like Social Security disability, workers' compensation benefits, or even work earnings if you're able to work in some type of part-time capacity. So let me show you exactly what this looks like here. I'm going to walk you through a calculation of a long-term disability benefit. And there's a lot of information to look at here, so I'm just going to take it piece by piece and start at the top. We're going to make an assumption here that this person was earning $3,000 a month before they became disabled. And then also there's a second assumption that sometime down the road they're going to be awarded disability benefits from Social Security in the amount of $1,000 per month. So right here in the middle of the screen is the calculation. If there's no deductible income whatsoever, you'd simply take the $3,000 of pre-disability earnings, multiply that by 60% to arrive at a long-term disability benefit amount of $1,800 a month. Now let's assume that a source of deductible income enters into the equation. So the bottom third of this screen here, the calculation remains the same. You take the $3,000 of pre-disability earnings times 60% to arrive at a benefit of $1,800 a month. But now you subtract the deductible income from that. So you arrive at a disability benefit of $800 a month. So keep in mind, you're still receiving $1,000 a month from Social Security. Now you're also receiving $1,800 from Standard Insurance Company. So the two benefits combined will get you up to 60% income replacement. There's also a benefit waiting period before disability payments start. And the waiting period is 180 days from the date of your disability or the expiration of your sick leave, whichever is later. There's also what's called a definition of disability, and this is very important to understand. There's two periods of disability that the insurance company will review you for. So the first period is called the own occupation period of disability. So the insurance company is going to take a look at your condition and your job, and they're going to make a determination whether or not you're able to perform the material duties of your current job. So in other words, the job that you do with MoDOT, Patrol, or EMPERS. And if the answer to that is yes, that you are disabled from being able to do your own job, you can remain on the disability benefits for up to 2 years. Now, you can stay on the disability benefits for longer than 2 years as well, but you'd have to meet a second standard called an any occupation period of disability. So here, the standard is that you're unable to perform the material duties of any job based on your education, training, and or experience. So in other words, they're going to look at your unique skill set, your professional qualifications, your education, your training, and your experience, and they're going to make a determination as to whether or not there's any job out there for which you're reasonably qualified. And if the answer to that is no, then you can remain on the disability until the maximum benefit period. Now, the maximum benefit period is all the way until the point in time in which you reach normal retirement eligibility. So one important thing to know about this disability benefit is that while you're receiving long-term disability benefits, we, the retirement plan, are going to continue to count your service credit towards retirement eligibility. So in other words, your pension is going to remain intact as long as you continue to meet the definition of disability. So you'd continue receiving disability benefits up until the point in time in which you're eligible for normal retirement. Then at that point, you would transition off of the disability benefits and onto the retirement benefit. So next, I'd like to talk about work-related disability benefits. And by and large, it's very similar to long-term disability, but there's some important distinctions. The first being the amount of the benefit. So work-related disability, assuming there's no deductible income whatsoever, would pay you 70% of your pre-disability earnings. Then, if you do receive a source of deductible income, the calculation changes. It becomes 90% of your pre-disability earnings, and then that amount is reduced by deductible income. So I'll show you what that looks like too, but I'd also like to mention that work-related disability benefits provide an annual cost of living allowance, or a COLA we call it. So that would simply be a raise that you receive on your benefit each year on the anniversary of your disability. Deductible income sources remain the same for work-related disability, those being Social Security, workers' compensation, and work earnings. And this is a look at the calculation of a work-related disability benefit. So again, I'm going to take this piece by piece and start at the top of the screen. We're using the same assumptions here, so $3,000 of pre-disability earnings and then potentially a source of deductible income of $1,000 per month. So the work-related calculation is your pre-disability earnings, this time multiplied by 70%. So your work-related benefit would be $2,100 per month, assuming no other sources of deductible income. Then lastly, on the bottom third of the page, let's assume that you're awarded Social Security disability benefits down the line. The calculation changes. It becomes your pre-disability earnings times 90%. So here we've arrived at a benefit of $2,700 a month. But then we subtract from that the deductible income to arrive at a benefit of $1,700 per month. So once again, you're receiving $1,000 from Social Security, $1,700 from Standard Insurance Company. So the two sources combined would get you up to 90% pre-disability earnings. There's a benefit waiting period with work-related as well. The waiting period for work-related is once you've met a standard called maximum medical improvement under workers' compensation laws, or the expiration of your sick leave. Whichever of those two dates is later is the point in time where work-related disability benefits begin. The definition of disability remains the same for work-related, same as it was for long-term disability. The own occupation period would last for the first 2 years, and the any occupation would extend beyond the first 2 years all the way until your maximum benefit period. Now, the maximum benefit period for work-related disability is slightly different. It's age 65 or the date that you choose to retire, whichever is earlier. So once again, service credit towards retirement continues to accrue when you're receiving disability benefits. The difference here, though, is that let's say you qualify for normal retirement before the age of 65. You could choose to forego retirement at that time and stay on the work-related disability benefit all the way up until age 65. And then at age 65, that's the point at time where you would transition off of the work-related disability benefit and onto the retirement benefit. Okay, so we've gone through long-term disability and work-related. This would be a good point in time to address any questions from the audience if there are any.
Sure, Jamie. We have one attendee that would like to know how they enroll in the disability program.
Okay. There's actually no formal enrollment process. I mentioned to you that this is paid for by your employer, and as long as you're working in a benefit-eligible job, you're covered. So when you go through your orientation process, when you begin employment, by virtue of you becoming a member of the Emperor's Retirement Plan, you will in fact have this disability insurance. Any others?
We do have one more that wants to know if they're not vested yet, would that affect their disability benefits that they might be eligible for?
No, it would not. So in other words, you're covered right away, and it's not tied to vesting. So as long as you're actively employed in a benefit eligible position, no matter the number of years of service that you have, you would still be fully insured just like anybody else.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. I think that's all we have time for now.
Okay. Okay, some additional services that are worth mentioning here, and these really relate to someone who's receiving disability benefits but desires to transition back into the workforce. And so the first thing is what's called a return to work incentive. And so I mentioned to you earlier that work earnings are considered to be a source of deductible income. But what this incentive provides is that during the first 2 years of disability, if you do have work earnings, they will not offset your disability benefit. So what this amounts to is that someone who is able to work in some type of part-time capacity is going to end up taking home more money than someone that's not able to. Now there's a caveat there in that if the amount of your disability benefit and the amount of your work earnings exceeds what your pre-disability earnings were, then any amount in excess of what your pre-disability earnings were would in fact count against your disability benefit. And then after the first 2 years, work earnings would offset at a rate of only 50%. Secondly, there's what's called a worksite modification benefit. So if there is a piece of ergonomic equipment or some type of adjustment that could be made to your work environment, there's up to $25,000 of funds that could be used to facilitate that transition. Of course, that would have to be pre-approved by both your employer and the insurance company. And thirdly, there's what's called a rehabilitation plan provision. So this would provide potentially for education and training expenses to be paid, or even family care expenses to be paid while you're undergoing additional education and training. And so a good candidate for something like this would be someone who maybe doesn't have a lot of transferable skills. So in other words, the skill set that they have is really unique to the particular job that they do with MoDOT Patrol or EMPERS. And so if they're able to undergo additional education or training, they might develop a new skill set that would allow them to transition to the workforce in some capacity. And so this would be a provision that you would have to apply for once you are approved for disability benefits. Okay, I'd like to talk briefly about actually filing a disability claim if you ever find yourself in this situation. First of all, to access the paperwork, you can get that on our website, empers.org, under the form section. But essentially there's three parts to it. There's the employee statement that you, the employee, complete and send to the insurance company. Secondly, there's the employer statement. So you give a statement to your employer, they fill it out and send it to the insurance company. Incidentally, your employer is not going to have access to your confidential medical records. They'll be verifying information such as your salary and your dates of employment and so forth. And then a third part that your physician is going to complete. So the insurance company is going to rely heavily on what your physician states about your condition. And once the insurance company has all three pieces of this information, they're going to begin a review of your claim. And they'll have a decision, yes or no, within 45 days. Now, they're within their right to extend their review by an additional 60 days if needed. If they do extend the review, they'll notify you in writing of the reason for the extension. And if you're not satisfied with the decision, you can appeal the decision within 180 days of the notice. And if you do undergo an appeal, your appeal is going to be reviewed by a new separate team of analysts at the insurance company. So the third major component to this insurance would be the Workplace Possibilities Program. And there are a couple of specific eligibility requirements for the Workplace Possibility Program. So this is for someone that has a condition and they're undergoing treatment from a physician. So they must be under the care of a physician for this particular condition that they have. And secondly, they must not yet be eligible for normal retirement. So if you're in this situation and you fit that bill, what you would have is access to a consultant. So this would be a nurse, perhaps a mental health professional or a vocational expert. And this person would come to your place of work and they would work with you to come up with a customized solution. So they're going to look at your condition, your job duties, and your work environment. And through that, there's a reasonable accommodation benefit in which a piece of ergonomic equipment or a worksite modification can be made to allow you to stay at work and remain productive. And really, there's a lot of information about this Workplace Possibilities Program. I think the best source of information is through Standard Insurance Company's website dedicated to this program. That website is workplacepossibilities.com. And if you navigate there, what you would have access to is, first of all, a couple of brief videos that explain the program quite nicely. But the second thing is you could do a virtual tour. So you could view different office settings or industrial settings, and you'd be able to view different pieces of equipment that have allowed people to stay productive at work based on a number of different conditions. So this provides another good opportunity to launch into our second poll question. And what I would like to do, similar to the first question, is I'd like to know from the audience if you are aware of the existence of this Workplace Possibilities Program, yes or no. So I'll give you a moment to answer that. Great, thank you very much. So it's a little more split on that one, and that's kind of what we expected. So hopefully that's some valuable information to you. If you never need to access that, then maybe you could pass that information on to a coworker. Okay, so what we've done here is summarized really the key provisions, the most important things that you would need to know about your long-term disability, your work-related disability, and your workplace possibilities program. I think really maybe the most important thing is just having the understanding that you do have this coverage and that it's paid for by your employer. Again, as long as you're in a benefit eligible position. Now, incidentally, if you were to go on a leave of absence, at that point, if you desired to keep the coverage, you would have to make arrangements to pay the premium on your own, and we could set up a billing process for you for that. Or you could simply let the coverage lapse while you're on a leave of absence. And then as soon as you return to benefit eligible employment, once you come back from your leave of absence, your coverage is automatically restored and then picked up again by your employer. So we wanted to keep this brief, and essentially that's our key message. We hope that this information has served you to get you to know and understand your disability benefits a bit better. Now, there's a lot of additional resources that I'd like to point you to. Number one, there's a PDF of this particular presentation attached to the webinar, so you could download that as a reference for you. It's kind of a concise breakdown of the really most important things that you would need to know. But secondly, also attached to the webinar is the Disability Handbook. And so the Disability Handbook goes into this information in great detail. So everything that you would possibly need to know about the coverage is contained in the handbook. That's also on our website too. Speaking of our website, that's empers.org, and you can find information with regards to your disability benefits on empers.org. That's also a great source of information about your retirement benefits too. And of course, you have access to the benefit specialists here at Empers. We work normal business hours and are happy to assist you in any way that we can. A really easy way to get a hold of us is by email, and our email address is empers@empers.org. And so I think if there's any other questions, if we have time to address one or two of those, I'd be happy to do that.
Sure. Jamie, we have a question about pre-disability earnings. They want to know if that's averaged or how do we calculate that?
Right. So if you're kind of familiar with the retirement benefit, we use the average of your highest 36 consecutive months of pay. That's not the case with the disability benefit. We use your current pay at the time of disability, and we take the gross amount. And so that's the pre-disability earnings number that's used. And, you know, incidentally, it's the insurance company that determines when you became disabled. They're going to compile all the information from the three statements, and they're going to make a determination as to a date of disability for you. Any others?
Just one more that wants to know if they haven't heard anything from Standard after they have applied, who can they contact to help them?
Right. Well, that's a good question. So just going back to that application process, once all three pieces of that information is sent to the insurance company and they've started a review of your claim, you're going to be assigned an analyst, and they will make contact with you. And again, you'll have that decision within 45 days. However, Empers exists to help you with this process, and we can facilitate communication if needed. So if you ever feel like you're not getting good information or you're not being responded to, please do not hesitate to contact us at Empers, and we can intervene on your behalf. Any others?
I think that's all we have time for.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you for your attention today, and I'm going to turn this presentation over to Mary now.
So this does conclude our presentation today. We thank you for attending and appreciate your attention and your participation. And don't forget to check back periodically as we'll be adding additional webinars. Have a nice day.